Welcome back to the show. Today we have Joy Randels. She's the CEO at Citizinvestor. Joy, welcome back to the show.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you back on the show. You did the radio version, I don't know, a couple of months ago, and I thought, what you're doing with Citizinvestor is actually really cool and innovative and kind of giving back to the community. So I thought, you know what, let's do this again, kind of dive a little bit deeper into that. But maybe before we kind of get into that, let's get to know you a little bit better and start off with where you grew up.
I'm originally from Atlanta, Georgia. So I'm one of those Georgia girls. I was born and raised there. After growing up, I went to school there at UGA, and then I also went to Emory University through the CIO Academy there as well. I've lived and worked kind of all over the world. So, after that, I've done Europe and different places in the U.S. I've had companies going through that. I've had companies kind of all over the U.S. and opened offices, Europe, Asia. Asia is very interesting from that perspective. A big cultural change from someone growing up in Georgia for sure.
Sure. Well, and you've also had a bunch of startups. You've sold a bunch of startups. So do you maybe want to because you have like an incredibly long resume. And so do you kind of want to maybe just sum up for the people that don't know who you are, exactly kind of the types of companies you've been involved with, and you've kind of had exits and kind of, been CEO at some other companies as well?
Sure. So I've had some other ventures outside of tech.
Okay.
But you learn what you're not good at, right? I had partners in those ventures, and I've just learned over time, I'm not doing that if it's not associated with tech.
Sure.
But net, of the companies we've had, 11 have been acquired.
Wow.
2 massive failures, raised about $350 million in venture capital during that time period. Took 2 of them public. Everything's been in the software space primarily. Some hardware. We had some companies where hardware was a required component to it. So I was a part of Cheyenne Software, which we took public and then was acquired by CA for $1.5 billion.
Wow, that's incredible.
I think CA. I did CA for a while. I ran biz dev for their eTrust division when we started that division and launched it. I left to go back to the startup world, which is what I really do love, is actually building and growing companies. And had the first e-provisioning company that was on the market. So identity and access management is what that is called today. And then I've worked a lot in cybersecurity. So a lot of cybersecurity companies and a lot in the mobile space. So our last company that was sold to a big company was a company called Velocity that we built here in Florida. And that was acquired by Akamai Technologies.
Interesting.
Another, $2 billion company that bought us, right, from that perspective. So it's been a lot of back and forth, but the other thing I've done throughout the time, for the last probably 10 years, in addition to having my companies, I've also mentored a lot of startups. So I've worked with startups here and startups elsewhere. I'm working with a couple out in California, a couple in Colorado right now, 2 up in Atlanta. And I counted up one day. I started kind of going through the list, and somebody asked me how many. And it was just over, I think, if we looked at coaching and working through about 800. So
wow.
But it's fun. I mean, I love that. I love to see other people, have an idea, turn into reality, and just kind of go for there. Because I think it's such a rewarding thing for them to do that. And it's awesome to be able to help somebody along the way.
Yeah. And I think too, you've kind of been through almost every kind of possible good and bad situation, right? From kind of just being acquired to shutting something down to and so you can provide so much valuable information to these people, right? And especially when they're younger and they haven't been through some of this stuff, or even people that have been through it maybe a couple of times, but if they've ever taken something public, well, you've done that before. So,
right.
And it's always nice to give back, right?
It's awesome. And I mean, I've also had the opportunity to work with VCs, right, on helping them with mergers and acquisitions. So being able to, because I bought a bunch of companies as well. So on the other side, right, when I was working for companies like CA, I was on the acquiring side too. And so I'm able to help a lot in those situations with due diligence and stuff, which is a lot of fun too. It's interesting. I think the thing out of all of that in the end, when you sell your company, and I learned this the first time is always the hardest. It's not yours anymore. And
Fair.
so you're now inside of this other big entity and they get to make the decisions. So the thing that you've worked so hard to grow through all of this, and I think if you grow for a long time, it's even more painful because there's so much more of you personally invested in it. And you see them making decisions that you know are the wrong decisions and you have zero control over that, right?
Interesting.
You can, tell them what you think and they'll tell you they don't care because they're a $1 billion company. And then after you do it once, you kind of like the next time and the time after that, you're kind of like, okay, it's not mine. As soon as you sign that paper, right, it's no longer mine. And I have to just, mentally move on from that. And it gets easier over time. But but I think that's the hardest part because people become entrepreneurs because it's something they love.
Sure. No, that makes a lot of sense. So how did you get involved with Citizinvestor and become CEO? Because you're technically the CEO of another company as well.
Yes. So Jordan and Tony, who were the two primary co-founders, I've known them for a long time. And when they launched this company, I was like, oh, that's a really cool idea. And so I said, hey, if you guys are raising money, I'm interested in investing.
Okay.
And they were like, yeah, we don't want your money. I was like, oh, well, okay.
That's kind of it.
Well, they didn't give up equity, which I applaud them for, right?
Okay.
They're like, we're going to kind of do this our way. So they took $150,000 in funding from one single person, right? And that was their capital other than the money that they kind of put in themselves. The two of them met working on a campaign, is how they met each other for someone running for Congress. And Tony had this idea. He did volunteer work with the city council, and he kept seeing all these projects that were approved, but there was no money. And so, kind of had all these things that are just sitting there, but there's no money in the budget to fund them. And he's like, well, that's kind of foolish. Like, there's these things that the community really needs, like parks and bike lanes and things like that, but there's no money to go around. So he and Jordan were talking, and they came up with this idea. They're like, why don't we give citizens the ability to, fund the things that they care about? So we could just launch a crowdfunding platform around that. And, they kind of bounced the idea off a couple of guys, met Eric, who actually wrote the platform, had hired him to write the platform. And so Eric is also one of the founders up in Washington, D.C., and they launched the platform. It's free. So they made it free for citizens. It's evolved over time, but to me, the idea is pretty cool. They went back and forth for a period of time, and then about a year ago, I guess a little over a year ago, Tony approached me and he goes, now we're kind of at a point where we really need somebody to help us kind of move this forward.
Sure.
Would you come join us? And I'm like, and it took a while. Actually, I joined a little over a year ago. It took them about 5 months to convince me to do it.
Interesting. So what made you finally say, all right, I'll do it?
I'd given them some ideas when they were going through some challenges, and they put those in place, and they seemed to work, but didn't really kind of get them to the end. And, Tony and Jordan had other things going on in their lives too. Both of them have, new kids, right? So
Sure. Yep.
They really kind of needed somebody to step in. They're both millennials, by the way. So both the other co-founders are millennials. And so, Tony he kind of reminded me of why I originally thought it was a great idea in the beginning. And I was like, all right, let's see if we can make this thing really grow.
Sure.
And so I agreed and, kind of jumped in from there. So we've changed some things. We built some things out on the platform that weren't there before, kind of made some edits to the back end. And we've added some other things that we're doing to the platform, as well as what the future direction of the platform is going to be.
Okay, very cool. So you kind of covered exactly what it is, but let's dive a little bit deeper for people that don't understand kind of exactly what it is. So how does it kind of work if I have something I want in my community? I think when we talked before, like a dog park, or you had some really interesting kind of ideas and things that people have gotten funded through the platform. So do you want to cover a few of those?
Yeah, sure. So there's been a wide variety of things. So everything from one I thought was really cool was kids in high school up in Oregon. The bike racks, they have bike racks. And Oregon's a big biking town. People who don't know, people ride bikes everywhere there. And the bike racks were really old and dilapidated, and they were destroying the bikes. Like they would bend the spokes on bike tire, bike wheels when you put them in and stuff like that. So kids were like, we want something different. So they said, well, we'll just raise the money, right? So they came back to like, hey, our city council will approve this. Our school system will do it. Well, can we fund on your platform? We're like, yeah, sure. So they literally raised all the money in 3 days. It was pretty hilarious. It's like the fastest thing ever.
That's awesome.
And they were like, oh, it worked out so well. We should put more bike racks, on the campus because we don't really have enough. So they went out and raised that. So the bike racks was pretty cool. And they did 3 different projects like that. And actually, all new stuff on campus, which I thought was pretty cool. And they raised the money really, really fast because teenagers, they'll ask anybody, right? They don't care.
Sure. Yeah.
So and they did a really good thing. Like they were out on the streets, not just in the school, right? They weren't just asking mom and dad. They were literally out on the streets, like singing and dancing and kind
That's
of explaining.
awesome, though.
So it was cool. Their video is really awesome that they put together. And then we've had kind of the other extreme. We had kids who, fixed their park in Rhode Island in a city that was bankrupt and had the youngest mayor in the U.S., 25 years old.
Wow.
And, they went to the mayor because the teacher said, she goes, if you could tell the mayor something he could do for you, what would it be for these 5th grade students? And they're like, clean up the park because we only have one park in town. And what I thought was kind of cool about that was not only did he answer the kids' letter that, 5th graders wrote in, but the kids got involved. They went and cleaned up the park with their parents. And the mayor, went to a local artist. And the problem was these trash cans kept filling up and they would blow over, right? And because they're made out of plastic or like a metal drum. And so the trash would go, it's kind of windy in Rhode Island, so the trash would go all over the park. So they made these super heavy trash cans, and they're kind of pieces of art. They got a local artist to do this.
That's cool.
So not only did they raise the money locally, did the kids get involved and the city get involved, but you actually supported another local business person as a part of that. So it kind of to me, I think that story is really cool because it kind of comes full circle with what they did. And then we've had programs that have been funded for like arts programs. We've had curriculums that have been funded. How about masks for dogs and cats for firemen?
No,
so oxygen mask, literally, I never even thought that was a thing. Trust me.
Okay. So
they make special little oxygen masks when animals are caught in a fire for them. That kind of fit over their heads. And I was like, okay, so they needed them in this particular community and they raised money for that. We've got some right now where it looks like they're going to be raising money for like body cameras for police officers, right? Which if you've paid any attention to things going on in our country, there's a lot of weird stuff along with that, which I think is kind of cool because it does 2 things, right? In this case, it will help protect citizens from, something bad that could happen to them, maybe if there's a rogue police officer out there. But it also protects the police officer because there's an actual recording of everything that occurred in that process. So to me, that's awesome because it benefits both sides of the community, right? It's not a partisan issue. It's a real issue that faces people.
Totally. That makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, so there's, if it's something that has to do, the way that our platform works, if it's anything that has to do with the government or you as citizens, right? So not just any nonprofit, but there's some governmental involvement or a government agency. So it could be a public-private partnership, like a lot of economic development organizations and things like that are public-private partnerships. We kind of validate the email address to ensure that, that's the entity or it's a .gov email, kind of thing. And we decided to do that for a really specific reason. There's other places like, GoFundMe and things like that where you can raise money for other nonprofits and that's fine. Those are great platforms. We chose to have the governmental piece in there because all of those organizations are completely transparent.
Okay.
They're required by law, both in the U.S. as well as outside the U.S., because we have other countries that are using the platform now too.
That's great.
To have that level of transparency. So this way, anyone who makes an investment can actually go back and look and see exactly where their money went. There's no question about how the funds were applied. So that was one of our reasons for doing that, and that's actually where the name came from, Citizinvestor. So it's a citizen investing in their own community.
No, I think that's really great, and kind of why I wanted to have you on the show again, because I think there's so many things that people in their own community would love to change, but they have no idea where to start. And to be fair, a lot of us are busy, right? Like you want to do something, but you just like don't have the time and you can't really go canvass the neighborhoods or whatever to say like, you know what, like we really need this. But with a platform like what you guys are providing, it's the effort level on like my part to start something is so much smaller.
Well, yeah, it's kind of cool. So one of the things that evolved out of the platform was we just had projects originally. And if you look at the site today, you'll see there's also a section called ideas. So if you have an idea and maybe you don't know exactly how many people would support it, right? It's your idea. So we had a guy the other day who called in. He's like, I've been driving by, there's this vacant lot in my neighborhood. We really need a community garden in our neighborhood. We don't have one. It's owned by the city. What do I do? And I'm like, well, why don't you find out if there's enough of your neighbors who would support it if it were there, or people in the area. And I said, you can post it as a project or an idea on our platform. And then, you can either put up a sign or put an ad on Craigslist or however you want to go about doing it, right? To solicit feedback. It's like, hey, here's the link. If you're interested in this idea, go like the idea and tell me that you would be a part of it, right? I said from there, then if you've got 100 citizens, right, who go, or 50 citizens, right, who go like, yeah, we would support this. Now go approach the city council person, right,
sure,
and say, hey, there's a vacant lot, it's sitting there. We would like to take it and do this. If we raise the money, would the city support us?
Sure.
And he's like, oh, that's a really great idea. So now people can bring their ideas out there, and then they get through social media or really like walking door to door or their HOA or whatever, they can go and solicit feedback to see if other people will support it. And then they have tangible proof when they go to the government officials, right, saying like, hey, look, people really do want this in the community. Will you help fund it? Because a lot of the cases, it ends up where the government has some money, but not a lot of money.
Sure. Or
in some cases where they have no money, we've seen city council members or commissioners or, aldermen, go in and they'll be like, I can't put the money towards the project, but I can help you get the word out. So I can help you spread the word. And so then, they show they've got the support of the government as a part of that, and that helps them get everything kind of the ball rolling. And in some cases, if they don't know who to contact, we'll help them with that because we've got a massive government database. So we'll be like, oh, in your community, you should look at, this is, who the mayor is. This is who the commissioner is. This is who the chief innovation officer is in the community where you live. And so,
sure,
this is the person, you should reach out and contact.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Because I think like some people are probably even scared or don't really know how to even do the research to like who to contact, right? Like, especially if you're not really a technical person, you're like, I want to build this thing in my community, but maybe I don't have a computer or like I just have my cell phone and, it happens, right? Like as a technical person, that's just seems so outlandish to me, but like it's more common than you think, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So I'm curious, I think you mentioned before you kind of have like a white labeled version of the platform. Yep. Tell me about that.
So we do. So we out of this evolved, we had communities. We actually had a community up in the Northeast approach us and they're like, hey, we love putting stuff on your platform, but we want our own.
Okay.
And it's odd how things have happened in the startup world, right? Like, because we weren't not really thinking about doing that. And they're like, we want our own version. Can will you guys help us with that? So we're like, well, we could make another instance of the platform and, we could manage all the back end for you and let you basically reskin it with your municipality information. So it started with one, kind of doing it like that. And they loved it because then they could post projects that were in their community. They could also look at ideas and they could use the idea component to solicit just feedback on anything from people in their community, right? So it gave them a different level of community engagement. So they really liked that. And so from there, it evolved and we had another entity. And now we've actually gone to like state agencies. So we recently signed an agreement with Florida Fish and Wildlife.
Oh, wow.
So they have a massive social media presence.
Okay.
You can imagine. So it's everything from like hunters to fishermen and divers and all that other stuff. So they have a lot of social media following and they're getting all this feedback and they were like, well, how do we decide how we spend the money that we get, right? Like certain things they have to do that are infrastructure related, but we have other money and, they can't patrol everything either, right? Like they can't see what's happening in every single, particularly like in Florida where there's marine parks and things like that they don't have tons of boats patrolling the marine park every day,
sure,
right? So they were like, and then fishermen see like how many fish are caught and is there a species that's becoming endangered and things like that. So they're going to use the platform for having the feedback, but also deciding what projects go forward. So now, people can suggest. So they can go like, we really need to protect this gopher tortoise, for instance, which is an endangered species that happens to live here.
Sure.
So we need to protect this. So we need more park space where these animals can live because there's not enough space, right? And they're like, okay, so now we can apply, and maybe it's just some small amount of money, like $25,000, right? So now we can put the money over there. And if people really care about it, now citizens can say, well, I really care about this, so I'll give money to that cause. So they help supplement the money that they have. And they know, like, if they need more money, like where they're going to go apply for grants and to write grant proposals and things like that, because it's a much bigger project. Like we have one of those. It's interesting. That kind of evolved into something a little bit unique. So we're now talking to, and this will be different. It's just kind of evolved there. There's an organization in one of the communities we're talking to. It's a public-private partnership. And it kind of falls, it's not an economic development corporation. They have the EDC there too. They have city government, they have county government. This group actually is responsible for kind of citizen engagement. So they built a river walk.
Okay, very cool.
They put on concerts and events, like a couple of big festivals a year, those kind of things. And so both the city and the county work with them. So they just recently got asked to bring the arts councils, of which there are 28 different groups in the county.
Oh, wow.
And I talked to their executive director, and she's like, there's no way, like, we can't do this. She goes, I have a staff of 5. She goes, this is crazy, right? And I said, well, what if we started talking about some ideas. I said, what if you used our platform and everyone put their projects and things on the platform? It would link back out to your sites, right? But for the whole county, you could have one site, right, on our platform, and everyone could put their projects and the things you're raising money for and all the things that are going on and the ideas in the community on that one site. So as a citizen, I can see everything that's going on in my area. I don't have to go look at one specific arts council site, that kind of thing. But then the things that interest me, when I click on it, I actually am linked back to their actual independent site. So they keep from a technical perspective, right? Like you're being technical.
Yeah.
Analytics data, all the things like that. So they know really what's happening and what's driving traffic to them and what people actually care about. So this will be a little bit unique for us. And I think it's a model that we're going to see happen more. I was talking to a gentleman in Spain the other day, and it's the kind of model they actually want to use over there. So he's meeting with their local government officials, and they're in a situation where they don't have a lot of money right now, right?
Sure. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
But there are like local businesses and stuff who want to support this, and there are people who are helping the community. There's a bunch of community-minded projects, and they're like, oh, we could funnel it all up under one umbrella. And if it's if they're licensing the platform as a SaaS model, then they can choose how they do it. So for us, if the project, none of the money transfers hands unless it's fully funded. Okay. Right.
Sure.
If it's their platform, they can make those decisions. That's really a legal decision that they would make on their own.
Right.
We just handle the back end. So we're the hosting provider. We host the platform, and we never see the money. So the money all gets transferred directly to their account.
Okay.
So it leaves them some autonomy depending on where they are and how they want to work things, because every government's a little bit different, particularly, like North America is pretty standard, like
sure.
Canada, the UK, stuff, they're pretty transparent. The US is pretty transparent. That's not necessarily the case in every country around the world.
Sure. No, that makes a lot of sense.
They may need some different rules there.
Fair enough. So how do you guys monetize the platform?
So we get a percentage.
Okay.
So if you're putting a project out there, we raise the money above and beyond the money that you raise, like other crowdfunding platforms do. We don't get paid unless it's fully funded and the money gets transferred at the end. And it's a relatively low fee unless you have us doing a bunch of other work. It's 5%, so it's not a lot of money. And then on the licensing model, if you're licensing the platform from us, it ranges depending on the size of the municipality.
Sure.
From the low end to the high end, because that's how we kind of gauge what the volume will be on the platform.
Yeah.
But it's an annual license, pretty straightforward, and actually not super expensive. I mean, the high end is $25K.
Yeah, that's not bad at all.
Right?
Yeah. Well, Joy, sadly we're running out of time, so maybe let's close the show with mentioning where people can get more information about yourself and Citizinvestor.
Yeah. So Citizinvestor is really easy. Citizinvestor.com.
Perfect.
So very, very straightforward. All of our social media, same thing, right? Like at Citizinvestor. For me personally, it's joy_Randels is my Twitter handle.
Okay.
And you can find me on LinkedIn. So it's LinkedIn, Joy Randels. I'm the only one who's out there. So pretty easy to locate me.
Perfect. Well, Joy, I really appreciate you taking the time in your day to be on the show, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you, and have a good rest of your day.
Hey, thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.